Hey, you're not allowed to watch this. This video isn't for you. Keep scrolling. You haven't left yet, have you? You little rebel, I like you. Isn't it weird how when people tell us to do something, we all of a sudden kind of really don't want to do whatever that thing is? Like, don't push this button, and definitely don't push that button. See, what's happening is I'm triggering something called psychological reactance. It's a strong psychological drive to push back against any perceived limitation to our free will or our ability to choose for ourselves. But what happens when we find ourselves in a leadership position and it's more or less our job to tell people what to do? What happens when we're responsible for the safety of an entire community and we need to set some uncomfortable policies that might require specific sacrifices and compliance for the benefit of everyone? See, this is when we run into this strange paradox with authority, right? The more of it we seem to have, and the more we try to exercise it, the less effective we become, and the more backlash in the form of reactance we experience from those being told what to do. In the next 12 minutes, we're gonna discover what is psychological reactance, how using authority and mandates can trigger a reactance backlash, and what are 3 strategies that we as leaders can use to avoid this when we find ourselves looking to get compliance. I'm Radar, and I've spent the past 10 years studying human behavior and analyzing conflicts all over the world, from universities to government agencies to even jumping out of airplanes with special operations. But what's my real expertise? That's turning complex problems into actionable solutions. My mission is to give you the most effective tools so that you can crush your own challenges and make a meaningful, positive impact on the world. So let's dive into it. Welcome to the Renegade Institute. All right, so today's episode is gonna be based on the book, The Catalyst, How to Change Anyone's Mind by Dr. Jonah Berger. He's an American professor from the University of Pennsylvania and a New York Times best-selling author. See, we as leaders, sometimes we need to make tough decisions that require us to exercise authority and essentially demand compliance from those around us, from enforcing policies to enacting changes or requiring sacrifices from some for the betterment of the whole. But just as anyone with a teenager can tell you, most people really hate being told what to do. And this is called psychological reactance. See, psychological reactance is a strong motivational state that gets triggered when people perceive a threat to their freedom, causing them to resist persuasion and assert their autonomy. This leads individuals to rebellion against restrictions and doing the opposite of what they've been told, or doubling down on an action that is expressly forbidden. Most of us kind of think reactance is just people being stubborn, right? Or difficult, or maybe they're acting out. But it's actually a strong evolutionary survival mechanism that's responding to threats to our freedom and agency. Basically, I'm coming in and I'm trying to tell you what to do, and I'm attempting to exert authority over you. And as a result, I'm taking away your agency or your ability to choose your actions and your destiny for yourself. And like the good little renegades that we are, what do we do in response? Well, we're gonna push back. We're gonna exert our own authority. And generally, we just end up doing the opposite of whatever we were just told to do. Or maybe, I don't know, we just eat that Tide Pod anyway to show you who really is boss, right? Only this can prove a little problematic for us when we're in leadership roles, right? And when it's our job to make sure that everyone's rowing in the same direction. So, how do renegades manage a bunch of reactive rebels? Well, this brings us to our 3-step process. And step 1, it's actually on us, right? We need to recognize that not every situation needs an authoritative response. See, 99% of the time, we're not in an emergency, right? We don't need an authoritarian response because it's just unwarranted, and it's going to trigger more reactance from everyone. And this is going to disrupt everything from workflow to unit cohesion and trust. Instead, we can elect to use an integrative response where we come up with solutions and policies and decisions together as a team. This creates an integrative environment where people feel heard, incorporated, and part of the process. People don't push back against things that they help build, and this will foster a deep sense of trust and commitment to the team because everyone is actually working together to contribute towards this common goal. This brings us to step 2, which is we want to ask rather than tell, rather than dictate, right? So for every action, there's going to be an equal and opposite reaction. So we need to change our approach and where we're exerting our force. And we can do this by presenting the problem that needs fixing and asking and soliciting ideas from the whole team how to fix it, rather than us just deciding unilaterally and then enforcing it upon the team. And what this does is allows everyone to come together as a unit and collaboratively solve problems rather than a top-down mandate from a select few. And this creates what's called buy-in from all of those who participate. They feel included in the decision-making process. They feel like they contributed to the change and therefore will be willing not only to abide by it, but they may even help enforce it rather than resist it. And then for step 3, we're going to provide a menu rather than a single authoritarian directive. See, if you have children, this one is pure gold, right? Like all the time, how many times have you heard, you guys need to eat your vegetables, right? And what inevitably happens? It triggers a reactance backlash every time. So how do we get around that? We provide a menu. Instead of saying you need to eat your vegetables, we can say, would you rather have broccoli, Brussels sprouts, or carrots tonight? See, it's a little cognitive trick. It circumvents that reactive response, right? We are indirectly mandating that they eat vegetables, but we are still allowing them to express agency and freedom of choice by allowing them to decide which vegetables they eat. We can also do this by giving a choice of order or time frame as well. Would you like to clean your room or vacuum the stairs first? These are all the things we need to do today. In what order would you like to do them? But in some cases, there's just not going to be a way around it. In these rare situations where we simply must lay down the law and tell everyone how it's going to be. However, this will trigger reactance, but there are certain strategies that we as leaders can use proactively to help mitigate the backlash we might see from this. So, strategy 1 is when we are going to be very, very intentional about when we use authority and use mandates and directives, right? We're only going to use it when absolutely necessary, right? See, when direct authority is exercised all the time for every situation, it diminishes the importance and potency of the directive. It's like that parent that yells for every little infraction. At some point, it just becomes noise and it ends up losing its effectiveness. It becomes like living under an oppressive dictator, and this certainly is going to breed resentment and backlash. However, when you reserve your authority and your response for only the most extreme situations, it communicates to your team that when a mandate does actually come down, the situation is really important because of the rarity of you enforcing your authority like this, and compliance is necessary for the good of everyone. So when we use our authority sparingly, it demonstrates to your team that this type of authority is only used as a last case scenario and is reserved for the most dire of situations. Think of exercising total authority like a trump card, right? You only get 1 or 2 of them each game. If you use them too much, then you'll be facing all-out rebellion in short order. This brings us to our second strategy, which is we need to be making it clear all the time in all of our interactions that the well-being and success of those under our care is always our top priority. Because sometimes when we do have to make those difficult choices and we need people to make sacrifices for the greater good, they need to know that we as a leader have their back, and that yes, they might have to make a sacrifice now, but we will make sure everyone comes out ahead in the end. And what this does is it builds a strong foundation of trust necessary to gain that compliance in those rare situations when you really need to lay down the law. And for those around you, they need to know that you always have their best interests at heart. They are going to be much more willing to accept a direct order when they know that you're there to protect them, rather than those that feel like they might be harmed if they give up their agency. And lastly, if you must give a direct order, you need to ensure that you have total power and authority in that moment, right? You need to make sure that it's known that only 100% compliance will be tolerated. See, rebellion, it's contagious, and a reactance backlash will be more likely if it is believed that it will be tolerated or successful. In these rare circumstances where you're employing a direct order, any level of insubordination needs to be addressed immediately and severely. You need to show that you are decisive in charge and truly the only authority in the situation. This is why teenagers are so much more willing to show reactance than young children, because they're kind of transcending out of that dependent phase of their life and they're moving into being an independent adult. And as such, as the parent, we're also transitioning from being the sole authority into more of like a partner figure for them. And this changing and unclear power hierarchy leads to more instances of reactance and rebellion against us. So, in conclusion, as renegades and leaders, there will be times when we need to set policies, implement changes, and require sacrifice from people for the betterment of everyone under our charge. However, there is a paradox to our authority, right? The more we try to use it, the more resistance is going to build against us, limiting our effectiveness as leaders. And this is due to psychological reactance and people's need to maintain control over their agency and their freedom. So, if we as leaders want to be effective, we need to recognize that employment of authority is like a trump card that should only be used in the most dire of situations. But in the rare situations where we do need to lay down the law and require compliance, we need to make sure that we're only doing it when absolutely necessary, built from a foundation of trust because we've demonstrated that we have the best interest of everyone under our care as our top priority, and insubordination will be dealt with swiftly and decisively from a position of uncontested power. If you do this, you're going to build a strong, committed team upon a foundation of trust that will be willing to follow you through the gates of hell. All right, so now I want to hear from you guys. Tell me in the comments what's one situation where you felt reactance kick in for you. Maybe it was a policy at work, a rule growing up, or even just someone telling you not to do something that made you want to do it even more. For me, hands in pockets all the time. I'm putting my hands in my pockets. Why? Because it's dumb that I'm not allowed to have my hands in my pockets in the military, right? So drop your comment and your story in the comments below. If you know someone who needs to hear this, maybe a manager who leads by mandate, or a parent struggling with a rebellious teenager, or a team leader trying to implement change, do them a favor and share this video with them. And if this episode added value and you want more tools like this every week to level up your leadership and crush your own challenges, definitely don't hit that like or that subscribe button. All right, for our final quote and sign off of the day, this is going to be coming from Leusch Kossuth, and he said, "The power that is supported by force alone will have cause often to tremble." That's all I got for you guys today. Until next time, keep forging your path, and we'll see you next time, Renegade. Lux Via. All right, we can do this. We can do this. It's gonna work this time for sure. Sacrifices from some for the better of the whole, betterment of the whole, or requiring sacrifices from some for the betterment of the whole. This is like the 9th time I'm re-recording this episode because my OCD is going off the rails. And first it's the angle, then it's the lighting, then it's the audio's all messed up, and I'm getting all these grainy feedback.